being human is messy. That it's being human is messy. Yeah. From the moment we're born, we're anchored in environments we didn't choose, with people who may or may not be equipped to care for us. And usually that's not for lack of want. I work in a newborn intensive care unit, so my concerns for humanity are always anchored in love for these littlest people and their families. It gives me great compassion also for grown humans. We were all little once. When our most basic needs are met, our brains flourish. We go through periods of rapid development where our neural networks are growing the foundations of our future. Bonding plays a huge role in this. The first few months are critical with respect to co-regulation and security. Infants who have all their physical needs met but do not have a well-bonded caregiver are at risk of many lifelong problems, emotionally, cognitively, developmentally, interpersonally, and more. No one should ever worry about spoiling a baby. There's no such thing as too much comforting attention for any little one. Quite frankly, the greatest threat to the current and future generations is not getting enough. So in the NICU, while professional expertise and life-saving equipment do miraculous work, the absolute best medicine for any infant is skin-to-skin care with their parents. The intimate contact of skin to skin with a parent and child regulates the baby's temperature, pulse, and breathing rate. Many infants in NICUs have problems with these things. So parent care is not only intimately nurturing, but it can be clinically stabilizing. Studies have shown that long-term developmental benefits of skin-to-skin care go far beyond the NICU. Parents are providing co-regulation for their infants and giving them soothing support they need to be safe and grow. So what's happening? This parent-child connection literally impacts our biochemistry. It's soothing the autonomic nervous system that's responsible for our most critical life needs: breathing, blood circulation, digestion, brain function. From birth, we are wired to need one another. And as adults, we still need bonded relationships to function at our best. This is what I'm going to call community care, mutual care. And we also need independent skills to cope with stress. Our autonomic nervous system has balancing parts. Our sympathetic nervous system responds to stressors in our environment. It's the operating system for our fight, flight, and fawn responses. So if a car comes screeching towards you when you're on a sidewalk, it's your fight or flight response that makes you jump, your pulse race, your attention scan your environment to make its next move. It pumps out adrenaline and cortisol to fuel our escape from turmoil. We wouldn't survive without it. Of course, all kinds of stress trigger our sympathetic nervous system. What we don't want is to have our bodies responding to texts, emails, media, like we're being chased by an actual tiger trying to maul us. We want our baseline to be healthy regulation, to know the difference between a tiger and a text message. We want to be able to think clearly, to have compassion for ourselves and for others. And we want to tap into the best of our skills when needed for mutual care and problem solving. So our parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for providing a response, an antidote to our stress response. And it's easy to remember the difference. Sympathetic, S, stress. Parasympathetic, P, peace. It's the vagus nerve that's the communication pathway for our parasympathetic response. It's what wanders up through the belly, through the chest, to the brain, tapping in to the frontal part of our cerebral cortex, engaging in the areas responsible for judgment, self-awareness, and compassion. So we'll keep playing with words here. P, parasympathetic nervous system. P is for peace. P is for prefrontal cortex. Ideally, our bodies regulate when we realize a threat isn't real. The sympathetic nervous system pumps the gas to jolt us into action, and the parasympathetic system pumps the brakes to slow things down, regulate our pulse, and bring us back to normal. Unfortunately, our nervous systems can become incredibly imbalanced in response to chronic stress. And we have to find methods like soft belly breathing, regular exercise, deep, long hugs, meditations, and other very effective tools to intentionally bring our bodies back to homeostasis. If not, we risk living out of a state of hypervigilance, hyperarousal, and decreased ability to engage in healthy behaviors, including in our relationships. So I don't know about you, but the past 2 weeks have had my sympathetic nervous system working on overdrive. When our stress system is firing on all cylinders, or even just emitting a consistent low flow of cortisol, we tend to be more defensive, less empathetic, less capable of processing new information, more prone to snap and say hurtful things, and more prone to freeze and maintain silence, where what we really might need is to have a safe space to speak. So when we recognize we're experiencing this immense stress, the first thing we can do is engage in activities that will help soothe our nervous system. Not only is this important for emotional and physical well-being, but it's critical to tending our most important relationships and being able to show up to provide care to others in need. So before we even consider engaging in a difficult conversation or walking into a volatile or grief-filled environment, we literally need to check our pulse. When we're in a state of arousal, our amygdala, back here, the back of your brain, it acts like the boss. And it's not nice. Its job is to help you survive scary things, not make friends, or solve complex, nuanced problems. If you have a kiddo or a grandkiddo in primary school right now, you might have heard them talk about their lizard brain. That's it. That's the amygdala. And it's what language teachers are using to try to help kids learn to regulate their emotions through positive coping mechanisms that activate their body's built-in peace response. If we want to have healthy interaction with others in times of individual or shared trauma, we need to be talking prefrontal cortex to prefrontal cortex. I do resident lectures with pediatricians training in the NICU, and we want to be here with other people, forehead to forehead. We don't want to be lizard brain to lizard brain. That is a recipe for disaster. So we have to be mindful of ourselves so we can be mindful of others. Because what happens? If we're in our lizard brains, we are not going to hear one another. Our stress hormones are quite literally blocking our ability to have any productive conversation. We can't soothe, we can't comfort, we can't learn, and we can't teach when our bodies are raging with cortisol and adrenaline. So even if we start out regulated, one of the dangers of interacting with someone else who is experiencing acute stress, or if we are mutually experiencing a trauma together, we're at risk of being pulled from our prefrontal cortex to our lizard brain. This is why we need to practice engaging our parasympathetic nervous system in non-threatening situations so that we can learn to have more control over it. That said, trauma never happens at a good time. The best case scenario for mutual care in times of trauma is we regulate our nervous system first. We find our P for peace. We steady ourselves in our prefrontal cortex so we can exercise compassion for ourselves, for others, and a mutual understanding. And in doing that, we provide co-regulation for one another. We prioritize this as a life-saving measure for ourselves and for others. It's not a fluffy extra to take care of ourselves. So when we remain calm and breathe deeply through difficult conversations to keep our stress response at bay, we have the capacity to help others who are in heightened states of distress. We can help experience relief, tap into their parasympathetic responses. And when we're distressed, we may depend on others to help us do the same. This is where we want to be, meeting one another, prefrontal cortex to prefrontal cortex, forehead to forehead. Because in that space, we are attuned to one another's needs. We hear each other's perspectives clearly, and we're able to access our own greatest creativity, compassion, and problem solving together. That said, our best attempts at mutual understanding can be extremely challenging. At any point, we might find ourselves moving from our prefrontal cortex to our lizard brain, and then we need a pause button. My hubs and I have an emotional safe word. It is a super silly word. If you hear one of us exclaim, "fuzzy caterpillar," it means one of us is not okay. This is a non-negotiable stop button for us. We are free to change the conversation, to go find our own calm, however is best for us, or just give each other a hug, tell each other we love each other, and let that be. But we do not keep pressing whatever we were talking about. In the last 2 weeks, one or both of us has said fuzzy caterpillar probably daily. Quite frankly, it's brilliant. Things like that might work with our partners, the people we're closest to. They might even work for relationships we're actively trying to repair. It's an acknowledgement that we care for one another more than we care for winning. The stakes are extremely high for life right now. The basics of trauma-informed care ask us to reframe a common question that we have when we're faced with others' behaviors that we can't understand. Instead of saying, "What's wrong with you?" we ask, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" This opens us up to curiosity. It compels us to ask how we are going to respond to suffering, rather than who we are going to blame for it. It recognizes that we are the sum of our life experiences, that we haven't had entire control over, that have formed and have shaped us and influence how we show up for ourselves and for others. It centers us in compassion. When we commit to this attitude, we can then lean into the 5 components of trauma-informed care to help us center the needs of other hurting people. Or maybe we're the ones in need of help, and we can use this language to ask for what we need. While these are written for clinical settings, I honestly think we can take a lot of wisdom from them. The first tenet is safety. If we don't feel safe, we can't heal. If we don't foster safety for one another, we can't engage in any meaningful mutual care. This component of care recognizes that our environment matters, and this can be very personal to any situation. A helpful question might be, where would you feel most comfortable and safe talking? Hint, this is probably not social media. Trustworthiness. Trustworthiness means that we are dedicated to confidentiality. We are consistent in our behaviors and approach, and we respect one another's emotional limits. Most importantly, we need to know that we have each other's back. We are not going to add hurt to hurt. Third is choice. We can't dictate healing for anyone. This goes for matters of personal health care, just as it goes to supporting folks who are hurt by war right now. Choice means that the people most affected by trauma are the ones who are supported in autonomous decision-making. One of the first things trauma takes away is choice. One of the most important things to restore is choice. Collaboration is the 4th tenet. This is where we engage in active listening. We provide guidance when appropriate, and we demonstrate a commitment to shared decision-making. The opposite of collaboration is dictating next steps and ignoring the voice and needs of input of those most affected. It is a walking together, not a walking in front of or pulling along. It is, I am with you in this. And the final component is empowerment. This is emphasizing strengths, exploring coping strategies, and focusing on steps for well-being. This is a lot, I know. We've talked today about the importance of engaging in stress relief from a physiological standpoint. We have the ability to learn and practice coping strategies that will enhance our health and our ability to show up for one another. And if we only talked about that today, it would be enough. But there are devastating, complex crises in our midst. And we have no choice but to navigate a world of trauma. Sometimes those traumas will be very close to us, and less so for others, and vice versa. One of the incredible dangers I see is that we forget we belong to one another. The news and social media might as well be direct IVs pumping cortisol through our veins, and we're reacting with fear, uncertainty, and aggressive opinions. In doing so, we end up othering people that until now we may have thought we had a loving relationship with. So who deserves trauma-informed care? Everyone. Lizard brain thinking has taken command of the world. Our only hope is to take it back. One breath, one friendship, one outstretched hand at a time. And as we do so, be mindful and appreciative of all the people who are leading in that work, amplifying those voices, and praying for those at the heart of these traumatic times, for their self and their community care, for an end to isolationism, so that they might continue this work of mutual understanding and sacred friendships, and especially as people of faith, considering our Jewish and our Muslim and our interfaith friends who are deep in the work of sustaining their sacred friendships in one of the most horrific and difficult times we could imagine. So, one person's thoughts are never as good as collective wisdom. So I would like to give you a moment to talk with your neighbor about something that caught your attention today. You know, maybe what skills do you practice that help you stay calm and present to yourself and others? Maybe what could you use more help with? And I'll give you about 5 minutes. Is that okay? Yeah, I'll give you about 5 minutes, and then just take a few questions and comments before we bring